I'm Max Sterling, welcome to Larpgasm. Today we're going to work on a project that coincides with my gray wizard character that I'm building for a LARP I'm going to. Now I've already made a hat and a cloak for him, and I need to work on some more costume components, but I thought it might be interesting to build him a weapon today. Now, not all LARPs are ran the same way. However, the LARP that I go to, you have mana points assigned, so you can run out of spells in a day if you are some sort of magic user. So it's always nice to have a backup plan. Now I thought to myself, if I was a wizard, what would I have on me? You know, a lot of them have the staves, but I wanted to have something a little bit different, something perhaps I could throw that wasn't a dagger. So I came up with an idea for a throwing spell book. And I think that anyone that plays any sort of caster or bard, or really anyone, could have use for a throwing book. And that's what we're going to make today. A good old-fashioned spell book that you can throw at someone and kill them. So let's go ahead and see what we need to get started. It's a real basic build. Anyone can do it. This is basically all you need to do this project. So we got some adhesive, some Plasti-Dip, needle and thread, open cell foam, a sheet of fun foam, some gloves, and some scissors. Now I would suggest not using a spray adhesive for this if you want it to last longer. I would use something like Barge cement or something along that line that maybe you're used to using when making weapons. But for today I'm going to use the spray adhesive just because it dries a lot faster. And essentially we'll start by doing some measuring, some cutting, and then we're going to put it all together and make ourselves an awesome throwing book. So here we're just using an old scrap of open cell foam. This is about 1 inch thick, or about this much of your fingertip. Now you can make the book as thick as you care to, but this is what I want to do with it. If your game has rules and you are required to use a certain thickness, they do make wider sheets of fun foam, so you may need to see about getting like a 12 by 18 inch portion of that. So check your rules. Now the important thing is that this folds over and we only use one sheet, so that's where we kind of need to measure this and see where we're going with it. So I want to use one side of this as the absolute edge, and then we're going to fold it over and see how much space we have. So we have quite a bit of space left here, and we need to compensate by cutting about halfway through that distance. So you can measure it if you want to, or you can try eyeballing it. Entirely up to you. Just err in the favor of leaving a little extra, because you can always take more away, but you can't add to it. And then of course we know how long it's going to be just by eyeballing the actual piece of foam and cutting it. So this will give us our basic shape and size. And I think you can probably see where I'm going with this. So it's very soft, very flexible. We just need to secure it. So we put our gloves on, went out, we sprayed half of this, because what we're going to do is we just want to do it in sections. So we're going to start with half. If you can see the edge here, we just want to make sure that this foam, even if it has to bypass the edge of the red a little bit, does, because we don't want to have any edges or any place where it can peel apart. So put it on there as good as you can and line it up as much as you can before you drop it, because this glue is very unforgiving, as I believe I've mentioned in other videos. But if you got it on there good, then you end up with something like that. From there, if you have enough glue, you can do this side. We'll go ahead and just fold that up. If this isn't very straight, you may want to take this time to straighten that up with a X-Acto knife or a razor blade. Once you have the spine of the book in one cover, then we can go back and do this side. So I'm just going to go get the adhesive on here and fold it over. I'll be right back. You want it to lay flat, but don't necessarily compress it, because you don't want it to stick together and stay compressed. You want it to be nice and soft and springy. If If you get something like this happening, you can take a little bit of foam and tuck it in there. You see that this is not very clean. This overlaps. This book could have been bigger. The reason why I do a lot of my projects this way is because I want to make it seem more realistic. Like, I'm not measuring a bunch of stuff. I'm just doing it by eyeball. Sometimes you may be mass producing this stuff, and I just want you to see a real result. I don't want you to feel like there's 100 takes on this stuff and I measured everything and all this. I'm just eyeballing this because you probably will be also. Now, if you want to measure this and get it all perfect, that's fantastic, but you don't have to. I'm just, sort of half-assing this, and it's going to come out okay. I just want you to know that you don't have to be some sort of master craftsman to make this stuff. All you need is a couple simple supplies and a little bit of time to work on it. Let's go ahead and we're going to even this all up. I'm probably going to use my bandsaw, but you can use scissors, you can use a razor blade or whatever you want to just square this up real nice so it starts to look more like a book. And with a minute of time, you can have this thing looking really good. Now, this is also where you could decide if you want to just turn this into 2 smaller books for throwing, or if you just want to make it a little bit smaller, you can cut a little piece off, or if you're happy with this size, you can just keep it this way. Now, if you use barge cement or something, you may have had to wait a little bit longer for this to dry, but we're doing sort of a sped up version of it here. So this is where you should be as of right now. Now, depending on the rules of your LARP, you may want to do this option or you may have to skip it. If you skip it, I don't think it'll be a big problem, but I'm going to do it. What we'll do is I'm going to put a very loose stitch in each corner of the book to help hold this fun foam onto the open cell foam. Now, if you're latexing it or if you're wrapping it in duct tape or something, you probably don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways just for a little bit of an added level of security so it doesn't fall apart. If you used a good adhesive, then you probably won't have to do this step, but I just wanted to show it anyways in case it's something that is permissible by your rules and you feel is necessary. Like I said, just a tiny bit extra to help hold it together. If you want to put something under there, you may be able to, another extra piece of foam or something. I don't know that's necessary, but you can test it out. And if you think it is, you can add it in there. It's certainly not going to affect, how it flies or make it unsafe in any way. And as long as you get the stitches in there, like I said, while the glue is still wet, you won't really have any deformation of the foam. Now, what we can do with a second sheet of foam is make some really cool decorations for the edge of the book. And it can be something very simple. You could just take maybe your scrap if you want to, and you can just cut a small design. Something like this maybe. And then place it in the corner, or you can do something much more elaborate. And if you sewed this, it's particularly important to do so that you cover up that stitch on there. Okay, now if you want to make more elaborate designs on the cover, maybe a strap for around it or something, this is also a good time to do that. You could use some of these scraps to make a strap if you want to, or whatever else you want to do. If you're with me so far, then this is what you have. Both sides done. Now, like I said, this is a good time if you wanted to make some sort of pattern or something additional on here, or if you want to make some sort of strap that went across or anything else. Your imagination is the limit here. Go ahead and glue that down with the fun foam, because the next step is going to be to Plasti-Dip this, and I'm going to go do that right now. It's very simple. We're going to use a black Plasti-Dip. We're just going to spray the whole thing down. If the open cell foam doesn't seem to want to take it, you may want to get some glue, just like a PVA glue. Paint this, let it dry, and then Plasti-Dip over top of it, and you should be good to go. You could also take and you could carve down the center here if you wanted to give it a little bit of texture, or melt it. I may do that, but we'll see. This is meant to be a quick, easy throwing book. So really, like I said, it's however involved you want to be in it. I'm just trying to make this fairly basic, because if I toss this, the wind catches and it goes off into a stream or the forest, I don't want to care that I lost it. And that's the whole point of making these things really cheap. So far, I'm into this for about 33 cents and whatever the cost of that glue was. And if you're still with me, then you should pretty much have a completed project. Now, I took the liberty of painting this off camera, so I didn't waste any of our time. But if you're not sure how to go about painting one of these fake books, I'll link to a video that you can go check out where I painted some books, and you can get a general idea of what they should look like. But dark blues, reds, browns, you know, any sort of earthy tone that's darker to give it an aged look. However, if you're trying to make one that looks leather or something like that, you know, then do whatever you want. It's your character. You know best what fits into your game and into your kit. Now, I decided to go with a green color when I did this, and I'll go ahead and show it to you. And I think that it turned out pretty well. I'm not sure how this looks on camera, but compared to a regular book, I'm gonna guess that it doesn't look too bad. If I stack that underneath here, I'm not even sure that it looks that out of place. So I think that we ended up with a good result. Now, I took the liberty of putting some writing on here, and this is really just a model to show you the basics of what you can get. But let me go ahead and give you a close-up. So I just wrote Magic Volume 1 on here, and you can see the little adornments that we put on here. Now, what I did was I used rub and buff on those. The rest of the book I just painted with a paintbrush. And of course I put Magic Volume 1 on the spine. The back is plain. And for the middle section, what I did to get it to look like this is I painted it with a mix of brown, yellow, and antique white. And then I took a dirty candle that I have, and I let it burn underneath it to give it that aged look. Now, if you wanted to, you could take maybe a comb or a brush or something, and you could run a very fine black down here so it looks like there's individual pages. But really, it's up to you how in-depth you want to get with this. For me, this is a simple throwing weapon. I'm going to keep it in a bag. Really, this will only come out if I need to whip it at someone in an emergency situation, and also as a fun little prop to talk about. Now, I plan to make probably 3 to 4 more of these, and if I do, I may go back and add some more foam onto it to make them look a little bit more elaborate. And if I keep the character or play the character at a different game, I'll certainly do that, and I'll probably make a much thicker throwing book as well. Now, you may notice that there are sharp edges on this. The game I'm going to attend doesn't have any rules against that for throwing weapons, but I know a lot of games do because of eye concerns. So just, if you run into a game where they don't allow sharp edges, which I think is actually most games, except for this one, you can always just take a cut and round this off. Not all books have rounded corners, but some do. You could even take and crimp it and compress it and look like it's just been worn down over time if you've seen old books that are sort of crushed on their covers. The world is your oyster. The limit is your imagination. Do whatever you want, but you could very easily round these off. I use a bandsaw to cut it, which is super simple, but you could just use scissors and just round it, or you know, a blade and just cut it and round it off. This side's already rounded, so that's not a concern. And really, I think it's a pretty awesome prop. If you play any sort of caster type of character, I hope you would at least consider making something like this. Very simple project. It does have some heft to it, so when you throw it, it will fly. I threw it outside. I was on target within probably 8 to 10 feet, which is all the further I'm going to throw this anyway. However, if I took it and threw it like a frisbee, I bet you I could probably get more than 10 feet out of it. However, for me, most of the throwing weapons are going to be for close quarters. If someone is within that range, and this is my last go-to item, you know, I'm pretty much in trouble anyways, but I just thought it'd be a fun little item to have, and I hope that you agree. If you like this project, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Of course, let all your friends know that I'm here making these excellent videos and these prop tutorials for you and helping you up your game without spending a lot of money. And if you think that this doesn't look that great, well, hey, we didn't set out to make it look that great. We set out to make it look like a throwing book that we could lose in the woods and not care about. The more time I put into this, the more I'm going to care about it if people step on it in battle or if it falls apart or gets broken. This took me, off camera, I would say that this probably took me about an hour with painting and all of that. If I would have made 5 or 6 of them at one time, it would have been a much smarter move. And if you do decide to make these, I would suggest getting the stuff making several of them. Even if you only plan to use one at a time, take the other ones and just put them on a shelf at home and save them for later. And of course, as always, adventure on. Magic Volume 1, eh?